Deaf poetry is
Ancestor, ancestor, take my hand, ancestor, lead me on, ancestor, let me stand, ancestor, I get tired, ancestor, I get weak, God knows I get warm, ancestor, through the storm, ancestor, through the night, ancestor, lead me on, ancestor, through the light, ancestor, take my hand, ancestors, and lead me on. In my way grows drip. Ancestors, please linger near. When my life is almost gone, hear my cry, hear my call. Take my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, ancestors, and lead me on. Hear my cry, hear my call. Take my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, ancestors, and lead me on.
Familo Wosoke, Kinlek Beoga. I am that which walks with you through the torrential rains of life without getting wet. I am that which walks with you through the firestorm within, yet fire cannot burn me. I am that which walks with you through the winds of transformation, yet cannot be uprooted. I am the memory whose shoulders you stand on when feet plant on earth. I am the head that came before a book. I am the you in that mirror that you look. Say my name. I am ancestor. I am a gungun. Ashe.
Mojuba, Egun, Mojuba, Egun, Mojuba, Egun, Mojuba. Hear my cry, hear my call. Take my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, ancestors, and lead me on. Ancestor, you are breath, you are bridge. You carry us over tumultuous time. You who can hear and answer with quick remedy, you are ready before we ask. You who can speak through tongues of trees and fire and water, this earth cannot hold you. We pound the ground and you appear, O ancient ones. You who can make lightning strike with the flick of a skirt. You who can make tornado turn with the spin and span of hips, take us there. To the place of knowing, to the hall that leads to the doorway of you, O holy ones. You of the first light. You who know the potential of possibility pulsing in the dark, deliver us unto our gifts. You who have sunlight in your fingertips, oh touch our drums. Make us hear the rising. Make us move a steady stump. A choir of voices so majestic. Heaven hides us in a tapestry of light, oh we are stars. Blankets of wonder. Sky bright eyes seeing the invisible. Visible. You who have returned. You have turned our faces so that we see ourselves. And we have found you again in places we would have never imagined. You make our limits infinitely long, our visions clearer with eyes closed, and even there, you still stand in full color, vibrant and eager to serve. Hear my cry, hear my call, take my hand, lest I fall. Take my hand, ancestors, and lead me on. Lead me on. And lead me on. And lead me on. And lead me on.
Dijeron negro y todos me señalaron. Dijeron igualdad, pero esta vez me separaron. Dijeron mucho, pero no se olvidaron de callarse. Cuánto odio por mi piel sembraron. Dijeron historia y la tergiversaron. Dijeron guerra, muerte, odio y nos culparon. Siempre. Enfermedades, epidemias nos contagiaron. Exterminación de mi fauna complace a tus mercados. Dijeron riqueza y todos se lo robaron. Oro, platino, diamante, a la fuerza se lo llevaron. Y la actualidad es tan triste que todo aquello que dijeron es lo mismo que hoy se dice más. ¿Quién dice, quién explota, quién se beneficia? El asesino, el mismo que da las noticias. Hay una cuenta fácil que siempre me da las grandes riquezas, de dónde vienen y hacia dónde van.
Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao. Nati Dre es afroresistencia, cultura ancestral, afrodescendencia, solidaridad. Esa es la esencia, la diáspora africana eleva la conciencia, conciencia negra, universal, progresista y transcultural. Negros y mestizos revolucionando, pueblos caribeños y africanos en un solo bando. No más explotación, colonialismo interno, no más confusión, supremacía blanca en el Babilón. Soy rojo, negro y verde, afroliberación. Mientras más negro, más represión. Somos creadores, recupera tu visión. Mi misión es educar con amor, contra el silencio, vivo sin temor. Independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao, independiente como los Mao Mao, concluyente como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao,
como los Mao Mao. Somos resistentes como los Mao Mao.
What's happening, good people? What's happening? How y'all feeling? This is where we at, Rise Up Morning Show. You know what it is, Rise Up International Morning Show. I am one of your hosts today, Kalanji Changa. We're in the building. Hope all is well out there. It is indeed morning. Probably could tell from my voice. Shower, brush my teeth, and hop on the program. Yes, it is a beautiful day. 58th year anniversary of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense out of Oakland. That version started by Minister U.E.P. Newton of the Black Panther Party, Minister U.E.P. Newton and Chairman Bobby Seale. Today we wanted to pay homage because that's what we always do around this time. We wanted to pay homage to our freedom fighters. We have a couple guests that will be joining us here today. And we want you to sit back and enjoy the Rise Up Morning Show. I'm getting my guests situated now. A couple other hosts are running late. Of course, this is an international show, so sometimes Some of us get here a little sooner than others, but we're gonna go to a gonna get this thing started real quick. I'll be right back with you with our guests. Rise Up Morning Show. That's what we do around here.
Malcolm Garvey Huey, study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Their life was like a movie. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Their life was like a movie. I die, I organize. Everything I do's revolutionize. I build what's good for the whole damn hood. Study G's like these, really think you should. I study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Martha Cody with the Uzi. Listening to Fela Kuti. I'm Ogun with the machete. Especially if it's deli. Got the Santos for the hexy to protect me, so respect me. This is heavy, legendary, revolutionary. My wifey, she resurrect me when they thought they had me buried. Took me out the cemetery. Now it's family over every, cause it's all that's necessary to avoid the commissary. I'ma live for you five, so I stop getting high. If you know, then you recognize it's that black and brown pride. This the power of the mind. RBG, God divine. You can see through the lies if you could read between the lines.
I live, I die, I organize. Everything I do revolutionize. I build what's good for the whole damn hood. Study G's like these, really think you should.
Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey.
Malcolm Garvey Huey, Bunchy Bobby, packing Tukey. Sitting by the door so you can say I'm acting spooky. Just like in the movie, son, you better pack your toolie. Niggas switch be acting fruity, you'll be cracking like they pookie. Rather smoke a doobie than be burning and eluding. Bang, bang, pig shooting, we should blame Rudy Julie. Yanny for the camera, shine a white and nose candy. Let you banging on the system, you a gangster wearing panties. RBG, my family from the Bronx to Miami. Police cannot stand me, Pacquiao like a Manny. Call me Little Bobby Hutton, cause I'm first to push the button. Rappers don't be saying nothing to the system, we say fuck them. This is for the Honda, Mama C, Mama Akua. All the real OGs, I'm a soldier, cause you told me study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey, I'm reporting in the duty.
Sticky, icky, yours truly here for duty. Don Davino, M.A. you know how we drop the jury. This is real, not a movie, not Mickey, Donald, Goofy. I'm a soldier, I avoid a bitch nigga like the cooties.
School face in a hoodie.
Fresh pair of khakis, we can do this like we fam. Go to war like the Apaches. For whatever, I stay ready. I learned that in Tallahassee. Babatunde used to school me as a juvie, skipping classes. Never let the system use me. My duty is my passage. Watch the homies in your army. They don't always show their badges. Keep your family living healthy. Teach your children about their blackness. Teach your wifey how to use the ratchet. This shit is classic. Get your food, clothes, and shelter. Fuck the system, pimp it backwards. I ain't hating. I'm just saying, if you wanna be a rapper, study
Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey. Study Malcolm Garvey Huey. Malcolm Garvey Huey.
A tactical approach is designed to get certain.
What's happening, good people? We are live and direct again. It is the Rise Up Morning Show, 58th edition, 58th anniversary of the Black Panther Party for self-defense. As always, we have guests on these shows. If you missed yesterday's show, we implore you to go back and check it out. Yesterday's show, last night's show, was about Indigenous Day. We had a few different Indigenous warriors on talking about what Indigenous Day means to them. So, you know, you want to definitely check out what we discussed last night. Also, Professor Griff had a Dynamite show yesterday as well. Make sure you tap back in. I have a special guest here today who is no stranger to the Rise Up Morning Show, who's no stranger to Black Power Media. If it's your first time tapping into Black Power Media, make sure you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. But I'm going to bring to the stage right now one of my OGs, brothers, comrades, uncles, etc., etc. What's happening, my man? What's going on, D?
Good morning, brother. How you doing? How's everybody? Peace.
No doubt, no doubt. We're live on arrival, still here. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too, black man. Know you still surviving in Babylon.
Hey man, it's hard out here.
It ain't easy when you're black and greasy, bro.
Boy, it ain't easy when you black and greasy or young and ashy. How are we gonna do this? Word. But for folks who are unfamiliar, this is Daruba Ben Wahad. If you haven't seen his face, we know you never watched our program before, because he's an official, unofficial co-host. You know what I'm saying? And all kinds of other shit. But anyway, D, it's the 58-year anniversary of the Black Panther Party, man. What is that? How does that sound to you?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. I think that rather than celebrate anniversaries, I would have preferred to be celebrating the consolidation of our movement over the years into a black political and third world political entity in the United States that could exert some type of consequences on the status quo and on the white supremacist construct that would afford African people and people of color in the United States the opportunity to express themselves politically, to exert some forms of community self-control, community control, and that we would have put to rest the militarized police state and have ushered in a new dispensation, a new type of public safety programs and institutions. But unfortunately, the movement was shattered. What followed was chaos and reactionary, and the rise of a reactionary black boule Negro class that we've been saddled with. And the results is that in 3 weeks, you'll have an election in which a reactionary and candidate from the Democratic Party is going to contest for the presidential elections against a white supremacist, fart-busting cracker, orange man, Donald Trump. And so fascism is looming over our heads. We have no movement, and black people are utterly powerless, confused, and disunited. And we're not in a good place on this 58th anniversary of the Black Panther Party. Not in the United States, not in Africa, and surely not in Western Asia.
I noticed something that you exercised today. You exercise a bit of restraint. You said you couldn't think of the right word to say about the Democratic Party candidate. So you just said a Democratic candidate.
Yeah. I mean, it's sad that in this, as the American empire lurches towards collapse, and the rise of BRICS and alternative systems and alternative economic and geopolitical rivals to the US empire, that this collapse, this would be supervised and possibly supervised and managed by a woman, ostensibly a black woman, who will be, she will probably be blamed if she wins the election. She would be blamed for the collapse and the dismemberment of the American empire. That's like a racist, misogynist nightmare, dream, or whatever you might want to call it, that they could blame a black woman for the demise of empire, for the war that's coming, for the slaughter of millions, and the military diplomacy of the United States abroad. It's sad. That's
been happening for centuries. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, we already know. I mean, there is no who's to blame right now. You know what I'm saying? We already know what time it is. Like I said, yesterday was quote unquote Indigenous Peoples Day. The wild thing is that one day you got crackers out here celebrating Columbus, and then the next day you're talking about the anniversary of the Black Panther Party. So that speaks volumes in and of itself.
Yeah, I know, right? Columbus Day. and I mean, the mere fact that the hue and cry over the past decade about Columbus and his genocide of the Carib peoples, in what we call today the Caribbean, named after the people who were slaughtered and wiped off the face of the planet by these European conquistadores and European so-called adventurers and explorers. That we would pick that day and call it Indigenous Day. I don't know why we couldn't have a whole nother day. Why don't we cite the Indigenous Day, name it after on the anniversary of the Little Bighorn? Right. You know, why wouldn't Indigenous Day be that anniversary? You know, I find it ironic that indigenous people have had to settle for the date of Columbus's birthday or discovery or whatever it is, as a holiday for themselves, as a recognition of their own existence. I mean, that's right there is disheartening.
Yeah. No, and I was telling folks, man, yesterday, I'm just like, you know, just looking at that whole concept. And of course, you know, we're gonna get back to what the topic is, but you know, it's like with Juneteenth, let's commercialize it as much as possible. Let's make you feel good and say, look, this is the day we freed you. We're gonna give you some colored ice cream, and you know what I'm saying, and some you know, all types of other nonsense to make you feel like you've advanced in society. You know what I mean? The fact that even has to be acknowledged is a sad day in reality, especially knowing that there is no liberation. You know what I'm saying? This is just a day that we said is cool. You know what I'm saying? We said, yeah, we agree with you. We told you it's free on this particular day. That's like saying, you know, we told you that you're going to get out of prison on this particular day. I'm thinking about Veronza Bowers. You're going to get out of prison on this particular day. We're going to hold you extra 20 years. How that work?
Well, I think, you know, why don't we radical Africans in the United States should celebrate, if they want to celebrate, or if they want to recognize a historical event, why not have celebrate the uprising, the Nat Turner Rebellion, and call it Black Liberation Army Day? Right. You know, or you know, or Solidarity with Third World Armed Struggle Day. You know,
right.
It's really pathetic that we have to use the footnotes of white supremacist colonial history, that we as people of color, as Africans, as former kidnapped victims of white supremacist colonization and chattel slavery, have to use the holidays of our oppressors in order to commemorate our own struggles and our own resistance. It's really pathetic that we don't have holidays based on our struggles rather than based on our oppressors' struggle and victories. So, yeah. Just like Christmas is a pagan holiday, we all know that Esau ibn Maryam, or Jesus Christ as the Christians call him, wasn't born on the 25th of December. That the reason why the 25th of December is called Christmas and recognizes the so-called birth of Christ is because the 25th of December or the 21st or that week is the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, and it used to be a pagan holiday. And in order for pagans to adapt to Christianity, many of the pagan holidays like Easter and Christmas were converted into Christian holidays and Christian events and festivals. Yeah, we are pathetic people. We are people with no recognition of our own history, of our own struggles. Instead, we tag along with whatever white folks say is of significance, historical significance. We tag along with that. But the anniversary of the Black Panther Party, of course, is a whole different ball game. It's a whole different thing. And the anniversary of the Black Panther Party's founding in October of 1966 was a seminal event in our recent struggle, because it brought to fore our right to self-defense. It brought to the forefront our right to resist white supremacist violence and the white supremacist armed agents of the state, armed agents of the state in blue costumes that we call police today. I think we should be celebrating our freedom fighters. We should be commemorating those who died on the front lines of resistance to white supremacy and white supremacist violence. But no, we're not doing that. We're celebrating. Well, we're not even celebrating. We're recognizing. Some of us are recognizing the founding of the Black Panther Party by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale in October of 1966. And so I look at this with mixed feelings of regret, of frustration, and of course I have to remember many of my comrades who have passed since then. You know, recently Sekou Odinga and others who have transitioned. You know, Lee Barry, who transitioned earlier this year, who was one of the Panther 21. It's not really a good holiday for me, you know. So I'm just hope that I just feel I have mixed feelings about this day.
Well, let me ask you this, because again, I've known you for a few good decades at this point. You helped me get all my gray hairs. I can give you credit for that.
Yeah.
The ones in the front. I want to ask, like, you know, because we've seen throughout the years a sort of hero worship, for lack of better words, of the Black Panther Party. A lot of folks, you know, a lot of young folks in my generation, after, so on and so forth, I think they looked at it as almost nostalgic, or like some type of situation where I think they, in many cases, they studied the dress code, they studied the mannerism, they studied the speech patterns, they studied, they mimicked a couple of the programs, and they've taken on this persona, but many haven't studied the problems. And when I say the problems, I'm not talking about just within the party. I'm talking about COINTELPRO, counterinsurgency, how they got down, how, you know, certain individuals were planted and inserted inside of these formations to destroy it. How the Baltimore chapter of the party came about, so on and so forth. Can we talk about some of that? Because again, I think that when folks hear about, and it's not a let's point out what's bad about it. It's like, okay, where do we go from here? We talk about almost 6 decades since the formation of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense under Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. 58 years. What does that mean, and how does that, you know, I mean, what would be what was the pros and cons, so to speak?
Well, you know, in October of 1966, the United States and its allies were involved in Vietnam and Southeast Asia. The Vietnam War was rising in importance to in terms of domestic politics and protests. Students on the campuses across the country were demonstrating against the war. Black communities were constantly, consistently resisting police violence. There were many urban rebellions in that period in the mid-60s. Every summer was called by the establishment a potentially hot summer. And by hot, they meant that Black people would take to the streets and resist police brutality and murder. The unions were unionization for poor working people was on the rise in the mid-60s, especially with Black workers in Detroit, Black auto workers in Detroit, Black dock workers. Schools were in New York. The Jesse Gray and the tenants movement were growing in strength day by day, in opposition to absentee landlords and ghetto practices of redistricting and redlining. The community, the radical community, and the public in the 1960s and 1966 were on the march. They were on the march internationally and nationally. The Black Panther Party, one of its first alliances in 1967 and 1968 was with the Palestinian people struggles in Palestine and Western Asia. I myself, when I joined the party, was on the Palestinian Solidarity Committee in New York State, that the Black Panther Party had set up with Palestinian students and activists. We were beginning to forge international relationships with revolutionary movements in Mozambique, in Angola, in sub-Saharan Africa. We were moving into our international phase of solidarity on a very broad level. So by 1966 and by 1967 and 68, 2 years after the Black Panther Party was founded, we had an international section in North Africa. We had relationships with the PFLP in Palestine. We had relationships with North Korea. We had established a liaison and relationships with the student movements in Europe, across Europe, in the UK. So it was a different world in the mid-60s when the Black Panther Party came on the scene. And today, all of those relationships are now tattered and don't exist. We have many Black so-called progressive organizations who have sided with imperialism in Africa, who are involved in U.S. destabilization of Africa. And so we have went almost completely backwards in terms of our ability to organize in our communities. We have succumbed to institutional funding that has weakened our ability to organize militantly and extra legally. By extra legally, I mean outside of the paradigms and of the status quo, outside of the institutions of the status quo. In fact, many of us, some of us who are in the Black Panther Party today are working for what do you call it? Are working for agencies and I'm not saying I'm lost for words. I have a considerable degree of impatience and an anxiety, I guess, about the state of the existence of Black unity and a revolutionary unity amongst activists in the United States. It's one thing to recognize the Black Panther Party's historical roles. Another thing to carry forward programs and ideas and organizations and organizational efforts that reflect the evolution of the Black Panther Party's 10-point program. And so it's, I mean, one could say that, you know, just being alive is a victory. I don't look at it that way. You know, nobody gets out of this life alive. So what you do while you're here is what really matters.
Right. I appreciate that. You know, I want to, again, looking at it, for me, just being a student, being that next generation, right? Looking, not imagining 58 years since then, looking at it, at all the, you know, a lot of OGs and comrades who have transitioned throughout the years, a lot of them who were political prisoners, so on and so forth. You yourself, a former political prisoner, 19 years. I'm looking at this thing, and again, just seeing my generation and the generation under, and hearing you talk about, you know, adopting the programs and advancing the 10-point program. I think that a lot of folks I see, they've memorized the platform, they memorized the program, as far as, you know, folks past your generation and within your generation. I also see a number of different individuals who may or may not have been in the party, who use the party, and the party is, as the Black Panther Party, use the Black Panther Party as a shield to make excuses, or some type of shield to say that this is the final word because I was involved in this situation. And of course, as you know, we learned, a lot of people, you know, like any type of situation, were what they call rally Panthers, right? Do you think that played a role? Because I think that, you know, again, with the generations under, a lot of folks kind of idolize the party. They idolize Malcolm and Garvey and so on and so forth. But do you think part of the problem, part of the disconnect, is folks holding on to the legacy but not living the legacy? In other words, you know, we run across some folks who are like military vets. They say, you know, I was in the military, I was in the army, whatever, so on and so forth. So they have their uniform, their hat hanging up, so on and so forth. They might have a flag flying outside the house. That's the imperialists. In this particular Black liberation movement, I'm asking this question only because I've been around bona fide workers. I've been around folks like yourself and Sekou and Baba Bilal, Sunni Ali, and OG Shaka, and the list goes on, or whatever. And I see a difference. But I also have been around people who, they talk about it, but it doesn't reflect their lifestyle. You understand what I'm saying? It's like a dude that's talking about how much he work out, and his body just don't look like that. You know what I'm saying? You know, you laughing because we know a couple folks. But anyway, I wanted your thoughts. I know that was kind of a long roundabout thing to say. Do you think that there are a lot of folks who pretty much use this as a badge of honor, but not as a means to pass on the platform, the programs, etc.?
Well, I think that, you know, I just want to give, you know, encouragement to those young and younger Black activists and Pan-African activists and brothers and sisters who are still struggling on the streets, trying to organize and mobilize people. You know, I want to give encouragement to them. I want to let them know that, you know, that their work will one day be recognized and their efforts vindicated. But having said that, at the same time, we know that the destruction or the repression of Black radical politics was extremely successful, and it purged an entire generation that was subjected to drugs, co-optation, in cultural co-optation, criminalization, marginalization, institutionalized policing, and fascist policing, and the rise of the Black comprador class, Black elected officials who have become the face of Black America. Sadly, these reactionaries, many of them have African names like Keisha and Hakeem and all of these appellations, but they are arch reactionaries. They're enemies of African people. They're enemies of anti-capitalist working class people. They have endorsed and they have endorsed the white supremacist culture of U.S. imperialism and U.S. domestic fascism. And so we're at a stage where fascism is what I call democratic fascism is on the rise, is about to consolidate itself. And one of the virtues of the Black Panther Party, or the historical coincidences of the Black Panther Party's rise in 1966, was that the rise of the Black Panther Party and its influence in the Black community and abroad thwarted and delayed the consolidation of fascism in the Western democracies, so-called Western democracies, especially the United States. But that consolidation proceeded after the demise of the Black Panther Party in 1971. You had the reiteration of the Black Panther Party went on for years under the likes of Elaine Brown and reactionaries on the West Coast and across the country who hijacked the radical and revolutionary nature of the party and turned it into a platform of institutional, local institutional political rivalry and running for political offices and collaboration with the police state. And so we've had that, and we've seen these organizations that claim to adhere to and to recognize the legacy of the party. We had the new Black Panther Party come along, led by dropouts from the Nation of Islam, and we see what happened with that. We see what type of programs and what type of institutions that organization existed for like almost over 20 years, and so people really younger people have had no historical connection to the original politics and legacy of the Black Panther Party or the evolution of the Black Panther Party armed wing into the Black Liberation Army. Most Black young men and women have no idea of what that actually was. You know, what legacy they could attach themselves to. And it's only through the writings of various radical Black professors and journalists that the history of that movement has come down to a new generation. We have to remember that the war on drugs was a seminal war on the Black community. That chemical warfare was used to destroy an entire generation and sidetrack an entire generation away from any type of radical organization and struggle. And so many of the children that we see today, who's, some of them are crack babies, some of them grew up during the age of crack and the heroin epidemic and cocaine epidemics. So it's very difficult for a generation of young people today to find their way through the labyrinth of Black radical historical development. It's very difficult.
Before you go any further, right? Because you just said something that's been said 10,000 times, and I don't think people quite grasp or understand what is being said. And just when you talk about the generations who came under the quote unquote crack epidemic, under the whole heroin baby situation, under all of this chemical and biological warfare that was designed, to be destructive, designed to literally eliminate and decimate people, genocidal tools. I mean, it was literally given to the community like, I don't know, like a mousetrap or something, like boom, here's something that you can, get this cheese right here and kill yourself. You know what I mean? Omali Yeshatella talked about the wolf and the razor, the blade that was sticking up out the ice and whatnot, and how the wolf would lick the blood that the hunter put on the blade of the blade, and were licking until they would bleed and end up bleeding to death. You're checking out Black Power Media's Rise Up morning show. We got Ruba Ben Wahad on deck this morning. Man. So just thinking about all of these different, like I said, just the levels of war, the intensity. How does that, when you look at it from the 60s to now, what would be some of the main differences you would say in, let's say, counterinsurgency? Because of the fact that we know that, you yourself being a victim of COINTELPRO, what does it look like today in your eyes and your estimation? Because I think that, we hear folks talk about it like it's a thing of the past. Your phone, your joint's muted.
Well, I think we are living in an entirely different world than the world that the Black Panther Party came into in the mid-1960s. This is an entirely different world. We are living in essentially a global village where technology and instant communications has made the human race much closer in terms of its understanding of events that are happening in real time. Right now, as we sit and talk in the safety of our relative safety of our particular homes or offices, there's a genocide being carried out in Western Asia in full effect, in front of everybody. Tens of thousands of people and children have been murdered on primetime television, on TikTok, on Netflix. I mean, not Netflix, the other thing there.
YouTube, yeah.
YouTube. We see this every day. We see children being taken from bombed out buildings in Beirut and in Gaza. We see the war in the Sudan that has displaced millions of people, where millions of Africans are on the verge of starvation. We see all this in real time. This wasn't happening back in the 60s. In order to look at the effects of the Vietnam War, to see the effects of the Vietnam War, we had to tune in on the 6 o'clock news, and we had to rely on journalists who were there in Vietnam to transmit, even on the minutest scale, the tragedy and the wholesale slaughter of people of Southeast Asia. So we're in a different world now, and this generation that has come to adulthood, that has come to maturity over the past 20 years, have this this social, political, and economic arrangement as their backdrop. I mean, even if we were just culturally to compare the soundtrack of my generation in the 60s during the height of the so-called Black Power movement and the civil rights struggle, if we compare that soundtrack, the music from that era, to the music of today, I mean, you got Cardi B talking about how good her pussy is. You know, you got we have P. Diddy, you know, in the slammers now for organizing freak parties and trafficking young women and boys. We have Hakeem Jeffries, who's the Speaker of the House, and who's an arch reactionary, advocating and supporting genocide in Western Asia. The police unions have become the most powerful political entities in urban areas today. We are in a bad situation. It doesn't look good for the home team. And so we have children that have been raised over the past 20 years in the wake of the crack epidemic, in the wake of the war on drugs, and now it's a fentanyl epidemic going on in America, and it's killing white kids. So now that white children are being subjected to chemical neutralization, so now drug addiction is no longer a crime. Drug addiction is a mental health and community health problem. But when Black kids were subjected to heroin and were the victims of the crack epidemic, we had draconian laws that were put in place, that still exist today in many places, that penalized and drug addicts. Black drug addicts were considered criminals, and methadone, a more potent form of drug addiction, was adopted by the state as a means to control and decriminalize heroin addicts. But it was more addictive than heroin. So now we got state drug addicts, who are referred to methadone programs by the courts. So this is an entirely different world, and we have the advent of AI, artificial intelligence. We've had the weaponization of data and the weaponization of digital technology. It's a whole different world, And so, if just yourself, you could see on YouTube, we have every brand of chicanery and buffoonery and political reactionary politics is available on YouTube. We have YouTube revolutionaries. We have YouTube pimps. We have YouTube. we have people talking about. We have classes on economic literacy run by Black capitalists. Black capitalism didn't exist as it does today in the mid-1960s. In fact, Black capitalism grew out of the LBJ's so-called war on poverty, when he realized that Black people didn't have any investment in the neighborhoods and in the communities in which they lived, and that's why they were tearing them up and burning them down. So he came up with the war on poverty, and out of the war on poverty came poverty pimps, and from the poverty pimps came the black local politicians. And now we have a Congressional Black Caucus whose legacy can be traced directly to the war on poverty and the rise of the Black bourgeois comprador class. I mean, we in sad shape. I mean, and these kids grew up in this evolutionary period. So you can't really hold them accountable for the things that they have been subjected to over the past 20 or 30 years. They've had no movement. revolutionary leaders were either killed, exiled, or criminalized in prison. Today, we still have political prisoners from this whole process. This Imam Jamil Al-Amin, who was Rat Brown, he's been in prison over 30-something years. We have Mumia Abu Jamal. We have other African political prisoners. Miles Siddiqui, and people. We have Leonard Peltier, who's withering away in prison from the indigenous community, from the native struggles for their rights and their land. So, yeah, I mean, we hardly hear a peep from any of the so-called Black spokespersons that we have, whether they're athletes or whether they're entertainers. None of them mention political prisoners. None of them mention or even talk about the evolution of Black political disempowerment through the electoral system. None.
So speaking of that, right? Because it's a lot going on in 3 weeks or less. You got the US election. You have Israel, still showing their ass, so you got, it's going down in that region over there, with the Iranians and Hezbollah and Palestine and, what's going on in Syria and what's going on in the Sahel. What are we looking at right now? Because the reality is Black folks in the United States in particular, and I'm not even going to say just Black folks, just people, period. The average Joe on the street is clueless as to what's really going on around them.
And that's ironic, because we're living in the age of information, and information is intelligence, and the Black community is bereft of any real concrete information about the United States empire and how it's unraveling at the seams. You could rest assured that the last settler state, the European Zionist white supremacist settler state of Israel, is on its knees, it's on its death knell. And we know that reactionary settler states become extremely violent and extremely vicious as they enter the dustbins of history. Israel, the European settler state, is the last European white Western outpost that was placed in the Middle East at the turn of the 20th century. By the British Empire, by Britain, and we know Britain, of course, is the Britain, of course, is the founding empire of the United States. The United States was a European settler state, was a British European settler state, as Australia and Canada. And we see what they have become. We see how they developed under capitalism and chattel slavery and industrialization and war. The United States is a war machine. It thrives on war and violence. And I believe the United States in its whole existence hasn't been at peace except for perhaps 17 years out of its whole existence. The United States is perpetually at war.
You know what? Not even that, because they were still at war with us. So the thing is, its entire existence, they was at war, or, I know that, outside of here, but domestically, we've been under attack.
Yeah, well, fascism is nothing new to Africans in the United States. We evolved from chattel slavery into the current denizens of democratic fascism, residents of democratic fascism, and democratic fascism means the facade of democracy, of political dissent, is allowed or permitted in as much as it doesn't threaten the capitalist ruling class and the controllers of U.S. policy. But fascism now has evolved to a whole new level. It's not the old style fascism of Adolf Hitler and the Europeans. The only consistent factors, of course, is white supremacy, is suppression of working class rights and working class people, is the control of economic economies, control of the means of production. All of these things remain the same, but the militarization of U.S. foreign and domestic policy has been consolidated and is clear in its last, as it begins to come apart at the seams. And black folks, you know, in the United States, they're clueless. I mean, seriously, they're clueless. There's war on the horizon. The Zionists in Israel are intent on dragging the U.S. into a confrontation and war with Iran, and it will not win. And the rise of China, you know, is a direct threat to the white supremacist construct of Western hegemony and imperialism. And I remember, I'm old enough to remember when the idea or the notion of something made in China was a joke. It indicated that it was cheap, that it didn't have any quality. Now, made in China, we're talking on iMacs and MacBooks. We're communicating with technology that the Chinese have mastered. That many of our tools of communication are made in China. The chips in this MacBook is made in China.
I was looking at this joint the other day. Matter of fact, when 9/11 went down, we had a brother where I'm from Bridgeport, Mango. Shout out to Mango. An hour after the World Trade hit, dude was on the scene with a bunch of American flags. He was just hustling. He's selling them flags off because he knew it was going down. The flags was all made in China. So you know what I'm saying? So the thing is, even the notion of patriotism, of them being patriotic, you know what I'm saying? The flag itself made in China. So you talk about it being a joke, that just tells you.
Yeah, because the idea and the notion of nationalism, of independent nations, has become somewhat of an oxymoron, because in the age of globalization and technology, the economic system, the banking system have all been digitalized and integrated to the point where the ruling classes and the economic elites of individual nations come together almost every year in Davos in order to determine how they could control the economy of the world, how they control the redistribution of wealth or forestall the redistribution of wealth. These classes are no longer just nationalist entities. They are now global and international entities, and they come together to regulate the planet, to regulate everything from climate change to working class paychecks. And so we're in a world now where something like the war in Western Asia threatens to destabilize the entire global economy. And meanwhile, black folks, you know, they're partying as usual. You know, we have a constitutional right to party. So we will enforce that. We will get out in the street and struggle for our right to party. When I ask any normal or working class person, oh, so what do you think about, you know, Columbus Day or Indigenous Peoples Day? They just tell you, man, it's a day off that they get to hang out, do barbecues, and hang out with their family. It's of no significance otherwise to them.
They got to sell at Bloomingdale's.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you could run into, you know, you can get sales on Amazon. I mean, Amazon delivers your stuff damn near within 8 hours. You could order something on Amazon and get it before sunset. You know, you don't even have to leave your house. You see, so it's a whole different world now, and people are enmeshed and caught up in the economic and political and social and cultural aspects of technology. We're caught up in that. And it's no coincidence that when people rebel against the status quo, whether it's in Africa or whether it's in Asia, the first thing that the state does, the first thing that the ruling elite do is to cut off the internet. It's to cut off communications between people, and that has become, that has become
that's you do to your child. You know
yeah.
what I'm saying? That's you do to your children. They're not doing what they're supposed to do. You know what? Oh, you don't hear me? Turn that internet off. And it's crazy because I was telling some cats the other day, dude talking stupid online. I'm like, man, all you gotta do is shut this cat internet down. He talking about what he'll do. You can't do nothing. You know what I'm saying? Shut the internet down and the war's over. I mean, that's insanity in and of itself. The fact that you have these virtual vets, and that's pretty much how what the internet has become good for to a great extent. Folks can literally build a revolution. Like, oh, I was down with this and I was down with that and so on and so forth. I'm like, dude, you my age. How was you fighting in Vietnam? You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you was with the
well, it's easy to appropriate other people's history and rewrite that history and then put it out and publish it, as a critique or historical account. I mean, you have this woman Kamala Harris. She's advocating in order to win so-called black male votes. She wants to federalize. She wants to federalize weed, because I guess she figures that most brothers, smoke weed. So, or we've been the victims of the war on drugs, in which possession of marijuana could lead to a life sentence. And so she's acting like she's a progressive, and she's talking about digital currency. She's talking about expanding laws on digital currency, because she knows a lot of black entrepreneurs and black men and young black men. They're big on digital currency. They're looking for a way to get paid, without going through the regular capitalist routine of, starting a business and all of this stuff. She's talking about giving debt forgiveness, taxation forgiveness to small black businesses. She's talking about reinvigorating on a digital level, LBJ's war on poverty. By raising up the banner of black capitalism. And I know that makes Roland Martin's, I know that makes him, that makes his Greek T-shirt Twitter. I know that tickles him, and he's all in. Yeah, man. You talk about smoke and mirrors, man. You talk about game.
Yo, listen, man. I'm laughing, and some folks might not even understand why. It's like, yo, this game, this hustle is so crazy. You know what I mean? Listen, man, this trumps all the hustles in the hood, because this is their playbook is so simple and so devastating, so gangster, that they look deeper than they are. If you come from a certain space, I mean, you can't pull some of this shit off in the streets, and they pull it off across the world. Like, I mean, like, you get smacked in certain neighborhoods.
Man, listen, some of the Mick game and con games that the government and these black capitalists are running, man. If they rolled up on you in the street and told them you would have punk slapped them. You would have said, man, what do you think? I'm stupid? What do you think my name is?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I couldn't even imagine. You should expect to get smacked with some of the shit that they come with. It's like, because you telling somebody, you in the hood or something, you said, listen, I know you crazy. I know you're a clown. I'm about to tell you that I'm the creator of all water and all kinds of craziness, and you're going to accept it, and you got to pay me for it. You know what I'm saying? And they do it daily without even, they just change the verbs and nouns, and it's all good, man.
Yeah, they took monkey hustling to a whole new level,
Yo, oh my God.
If somebody would have called, just look at this whole concept of digital currency.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Now, if a knucklehead had rolled up on you back in the day and say, look, man, I got some money, but it doesn't really exist.
Nah.
you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
But this is, I got this money and
you give me yours and you're going to be able to get more off this. I mean, until the internet gets shut down. Now the internet gets shut down.
Dollar. I mean, the average black person in the streets that's working from paycheck to paycheck doesn't even know what bricks is.
No.
What bricks stand for. They think bricks might be, what you use to build use to make a building.
Right.
They they don't understand that the dollar is absolutely worthless. It's not based on anything.
Man, listen.
But we killing each other over this piece of paper now that represents debt. And then you have somebody like Kamala Harris comes along and say, look, man, we're going to give you some more paper. And in fact, we ain't even going to tax the paper we give you up into $200,000 so you can start a business. What is a small business going to do in macro capitalism in the 21st century? Small business. I mean, what a fish and chip store, a soul food restaurant,
Man, listen, it's I mean, really, like, and we laughing at the tragedy. I think the thing is, it's like back in the day, I remember my pops telling me I did something, and he was like, yo, man, listen. He said, I'm gonna mess you up, not because of what you did, but how you tried to play me like I was stupid when I asked you about what you did. So I got to get with you on the strength of that, because of the fact that you playing with my intelligence right now, because you really going to try me like that. And that's what they doing to us. It's like the act is one thing, and how they going about it and including you in the act. They include you in your own demise and have you fighting and arguing to uphold their bullshit.
That's right.
So it's like on a street level, it is a true gang mentality where you get a bunch of followers. You know what I'm saying? To follow the lead of the gooch. You already know he a sucker. At least somebody know he a sucker. But everybody else is looking like, nah, he could walk on water. You know what I'm saying? So on and so forth. But, that one cat, it takes him to come bust him upside the head. And I think that's what's going on right now with Zionist Israel. When we look at this whole situation in the past year, out of all their bullshit, it's that straw that broke the camel's back.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? It's that million underneath it. That one straw, like, you know what? Today a good day to set it. You know what I'm saying? These motherfuckers been out of line too long. And they won't just let bygones be bygones. They turn up the heat regularly.
But the sad part about this is that that this genocide that's going on in Western Asia has pulled the covers off of the notion and an idea of Western civilization being a Western civilization being the auspices and the womb for humanity, human rights, and international law. We see that when it comes to white supremacy and it comes to white settlers, that there is no international law, that they could do whatever they want to do, that might makes right. The U.S. is manufacturing bombs and selling it to them wholesale, giving it away. And these same bombs are used to slaughter Palestinian people, to slaughter the people in Lebanon. These same bombs are given to the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, to finance, and these weapons are used to finance the rapid deployment force in Sudan that has murdered hundreds of thousands and raped hundreds of thousands of Sudanese and African women and children. So, meanwhile, we're talking about what? We're talking about economic literacy. We're having classes on how to open up a bakery in the community and hire 4 or 5 people and consider that, progress, consider that employing Black people. We have no idea, no clue that capitalism is in crisis. The capitalism is unraveling. The capitalism has led to the slaughter and the murder of millions and millions of people over the past century. And that we're having economic literacy classes about how to get debt forgiveness for opening up a soul food restaurant, in the Black community. Don't get it twisted now. I love me some good, some Hop and John, and I'm big on, on some codfish and stuff. I don't get it twisted now. It's not the food I'm talking about. It's the delusion that capitalism is somehow, beneficiary to our existence, rather than us understanding the nature of capitalism and how we can build a political a force to transform our societies into economic into economic entities that could support life, that could support the planet and give life to people. How we could redistribute wealth so that the majority of the world's population is not controlled by less than 1% of the rich and the wealthy. One of the things that we are not dealing with is the fact that capitalism is in crisis now because the ruling elites across the Western world are trying to thwart the redistribution of global wealth. They're trying to change the paradigm of capitalist imperialism and exploitation of people of color and poor people and the theft of their resources. They're trying to thwart this struggle. They're trying to redirect this struggle. And unfortunately, we have Black capitalists and Black reactionary politicians who are all on board in thwarting the redistribution of wealth and globally and locally. Where look at how we characterize success and failure in this society. It's totally based on the materialist concept of capitalism, of selfish consuming of resources and monopoly and control over working class wages and surplus value. So we, I mean, we don't fully appreciate that all of this is coming down, is crashing down right around us. And so we'll go into, I can get a $200,000 loan, to start me a Black woman's dress shop, Afrocentric dress shop, of quality clothing and stuff. And I'm not trying to say that the people who are caught up in this are somehow evil and bad people. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to say that this, in the age of information, ignorance isn't bliss, That's what I'm trying to say.
Right. Checking out Black Power Media. This is the Rise Up Morning Show. We're talking about 58-year anniversary of Black Panther Party and beyond, rapping with Dhoruba Ben Wahad. By the way, we have a book Black Power Media will be dropping in February of interviews that we've done with Dhoruba that'll be on Commemoration Press. So we want to look out for that. D, we talked in the past, a few things going on right now. We got the so-called US elections popping off in a few weeks. We also talked about a few months ago, one of the things we discussed with Cornell, with Jill Stein and Claudia de la Cruz was the United Front Against Fascism. And I know we're working behind the scenes on that. But if you don't mind tying in just how important is united front against fascism right now, with all that we're talking about that's going on, from the wars, the beefs on the street, as far as with the state, you know, the elections, etc. Like, what, you know, how bad do we need that right now? United front against fascism.
Well, we see the consolidation of right-wing politics in America has reached a crescendo at this point, has reached a boiling point. This is what reactionaries like Trump represent. They represent the last gasp of a white supremacist settler state to reassert its control over the population that is of the U.S. that is increasingly becoming a population of color. We know that in 15 or 20 years, white Americans will be a minority in the United States. And the United States was a white supremacist settler state. It was created for in that spirit and for that purpose, to maintain white supremacy and the control over land and resources by elite settler class. And this is all becoming very difficult to maintain. This is why immigrations is such a hot button issue. Okay. And if we look at the hot button issue of immigrations, it's occurring at the southern border. And the southern border of states, Texas, all of these states, California, on the southern border, were once part of Spain, were once part of Mexico. And the United States took these territories in war in the American Mexican War. You know, they seized this land all the way to the river, to the Rio Grande. And the United States, after as it consolidated its power across the continent, also evolved the doctrine, the so-called Monroe Doctrine, that looked at Latin America and South America and Central America as the backyard of the white supremacist construct that's the United States. And so when we look at all of these migrants coming from Latin America and coming from Central America to the United States, seeking jobs, seeking a better life, we fail to realize that the United States has raped and pillaged their homeland to the point where their homeland can no longer sustain them and can no longer provide economic support and livelihood for its people. So the people migrate. They're coming to the center of so-called prosperity, North America, and that's a problem for white folks in America, because they not only created the migrant problem, and this isn't just in the United States. You know, we know there's a migrant problem from Africa across the Mediterranean into Europe, and most of the North African states have been enlisted by the EU, by NATO, to provide, to become gatekeepers for the migrants in Africa, on the former colonies of Europe, to make sure they don't come into Europe and take over Europe. And this is a global phenomenon that imperialism and white supremacy has created over a millennium, and it's coming home to roost. It's coming to its final conclusion. And this is what the war in Western Asia signifies. It's the end of empire. It's the end of the white supremacist global construct. And this is why you see the Americans or white folks are always talking about pivoting towards China, and that China is the future threat to the United States and to the West. China doesn't have over 800 military bases around the world. China is not involved in conflicts in Africa and in Southeast Asia and in Latin America. The United States and the European Union, former imperialist countries, are. And we as captives, as former captives of this construct in its beginning, you know, we have lost our way. We don't even understand that we are part of an empire that is in decline, and this empire has risen on our backs. And our only understanding of empire is that we're supposed to get reparations. That's it. And
so when for folks that's checking it out, because again, sometimes we rap and we need to clarify. You say empire in decline, and you talked about how the empire was built on our backs. I don't think people understand when you say the empire declines and it was built on our back. Where's the empire going to fall? That's the question.
Well, when if we look, all empires come to a close. All empires fall now.
That's what I'm saying. It's going to fall on our backs. Basically, it's going, because it's built on it.
Well, we're going to be in the rubble of this. We're going to be in the rubble of this collapsed empire unless we build the type of political and economic and social entity or construct that could ensure our survival. And that's what the United Front is about. It's about ensuring the survival of working people, of people of color, of migrants, of descendants of African captives of war. We African people have not grasped that we are in America as a consequence of an act of war. Okay, and that war is political, that war is economic, and that war is cultural. And simply because it's economic, political, and cultural does not mean that underlying this particular paradigm of construct of white supremacy is not the inordinate use of violence, the legalization of unprecedented violence. And we see that coming out in Western Asia. We see what the European settler state is capable of, you see. And so rather than us build a united front to protect ourselves and our interests inside the belly of the beast, we are instead collaborating with the very forces of empire that are deconstructing the planet, that are destroying the planet. We're on board with all of this, and we don't really understand that that's not our place in history. You see what I'm saying? That we have a unique role inside of the United States as an oppressed class that was kidnapped under conditions of war and conquest and brought here to the United States to build, to create the primitive wealth accumulation that would become the capitalist giant and superpower that we know today. But instead, we are in the U.S. military fighting its wars. We are in the corporate spaces struggling to become corporate executives and perpetuate corporate greed and exploitation of working people. We have made our unions into adjuncts of white supremacist suppression of working class people of color. We are on the wrong side of history. And unfortunately, empires may not weren't built in a day, but they damn sure can collapse in a day. And we don't know how long it would take for this empire to collapse, to completely become an entity that is broken and disintegrated into something else. We don't know what that something else could possibly be, but we do know that it is coming to an end, and the world is tired of this. The world is moving away from this, and in order to hold on to the control of resources and peoples, they are committed to genocide. They are committed to destroying not only people of color, but the entire world. And the global reckoning that's coming in terms of global warming, we see it. We see Florida, the recent hurricanes that's been attributed to increased global warming. The intensity of these hurricanes have been attributed to increased global warming. But we also know that according to the projections of many geologists and global scientists and atmospheric scientists, that Florida will probably be underwater in the next 20-25 years. Half of Florida would be underwater. Even the Lower East Side in New York may be underwater. as the ocean levels rise, as glaciers melt. And meanwhile, what are black folks doing, man? We just exerting our right to party.
We're gonna mess around and we're gonna put you down in history as the Black Nostradamus. So you know what I'm saying? They'll be showing clips of this show, like, yo, he predicted it. He said Cassie be underwater.
This is not no, you know, I mean, this ain't man, Ray Charles could have saw this coming, you know. And
listen.
Listen.
It's clear. It's crystal. So let me ask you this though, on the real, right? Because I mean, of course, we laughing, and man, listen. When you young, they say you gotta laugh to keep from crying. But as you get older, you understand exactly what that means. We're talking about, again, this is Black Power Media, the Rise Up Morning Show. And we're talking with Ruba Ben Wahad, and you know you got to take his ceremonial calls. That's how you do. But anyway, we want all y'all to like, subscribe, share this episode. We have a whole lot coming up. We have a whole lot that's been going on. Make sure you tap into some of our past episodes and continue to support our efforts, the work we're doing, so on and so forth. But Ruba, I was asking you, we talk about predictions. You have this war that's brewing, war on the horizon. You know, some would say we are already in World War III. You know what I'm saying? We just don't know it yet. You know, we have this war on the horizon, and we see historically how things have gone. We look at the number of events that has taken place just in the last year. It's like things have been sped up. In fact, I would even say in the last couple months. And again, we have this whole election thing coming up. I want to ask you, if you were to predict in your Nostradamus style, and your joint is muted too, by the way. If you were to predict the Ruba being the new revolutionary Black Nostradamus, what's next? What's going to happen next? Your mic is muted though, so yeah.
Well, I mean, we're gonna give out awards at the next what do you call it? A Black Caucus dinner. We're gonna give out awards.
Awards for what?
I'm quite sure Kamala Harris is going to get an award.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
And
we're gonna do this every week. These predictions. Come on, let me hear.
I mean, that's all we're gonna do. We're gonna give out some awards at the Black at the various dinners. We're gonna have the BET. We're gonna have the BET Music Awards. I don't think P. Diddy is gonna be in this one.
You don't think you're
gonna make it? I don't think so. We're gonna have.
You'll accept this award.
Yeah, you know, I mean, man, listen.
Africa Bambaataa will be accepting this award at the next BET.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, you know, we
is that bad, huh?
Yeah, it's this war that's coming in Western Asia is going to change, is going to affect the global economy on a scale that has been unprecedented, and it's not going to go back to the way it used to be. We have certain alliances in Africa that are coming apart at the seams because there's an entire new young generation of Africans who are tired with the comprador class and the sellout political elite of Africa. And this is happening in Kenya. This is happening in South Africa. This is happening in the Sahel. This is happening all across Africa as we speak. So the young people are rising up in the third world. The war in Western Asia is only going to be a catalyst for a greater cataclysm, global cataclysm and crisis. And of course, the U.S. is going to try to deal with this by using its military and using its economic power to to forestall the rise of any type of independent political movements and peoples across the world. And this is why the United States is so concerned about China. This is why the United States is so concerned about how the European Union is about to collapse. NATO is about to collapse with its involvement in the Ukraine. The Ukrainian war is lost. The United States has poured billions and billions of dollars into maintaining a crypto-fascist regime in Kiev to oppose Russia. Russia is in alliance with Brazil and China and India and almost 100 other independent countries and creating a new global multipolar system. The United States is no longer the big bully on the block by itself anymore. And so if the United States continues down its particular path, which would lead inevitably to conflict in Asia, in Eastern Asia with China, the United States is going to lose. And we know these crackers, like Curtis Mayfield said, if there's a hell below, we all gonna go. So these crackers ain't jiving. They have all these nuclear weapons, and they say, man, if we ain't gonna run the show, ain't gonna be no show at all. You see? Oh boy. And we know that these white folks is crazy enough to do that. This is what this is why Trump, who's a buffoon and an idiot, is neck and neck with Kamala Harris, who's who I don't even want to talk about this woman, man. This is ridiculous. She had to drop out the presidential race because nobody would support her, not even her staff. Even her staff was bouncing on her. Now she's the potential nigger on the trigger of the nuclear arsenal. This is really crazy. We went from Obama to Kamala. You see what I'm saying?
You can't lose with what we use. Well, listen.
Yeah, if it wasn't for bad luck, we wouldn't have any at all, man.
Hey, man, we're gonna make luck better because one of our comrades just arrived on the block. Another vet, another OG, another former political prisoner, somebody we all know and love. Man, Jalil Mutkeen. Assalamu alaikum. What's happening, Jalil?
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hey, I gotta move because the sun is all in my face right now.
Yeah, I know, man. See, you done brought the light. You got the sunlight behind you.
Somebody got to bring it. Somebody got to bring it. If nobody don't bring it, Jalil gonna bring it. Fact. That's right. Like the world up.
Hey,
that ain't no better.
Yeah, you went from one sun to another,
you went
bro.
From one,
but it's a little better now, though.
It's a little better.
It's a little better, man.
Small.
Yeah, bro. Hey, D, how you feeling, man?
Fighting fire with a feather, brother.
Okay, all right. Well, we can fly together then.
No doubt. Yeah, for folks who don't know, right now, we're joined by Jalil Mutkeen, another. I'm gonna use black superhero terms for y'all today.
No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, man, this ain't no Marvel comic book script
at all. DC, Marvel, none of that.
Nah, we talk about Garvey today. Definitely, you know what I'm saying. Another veteran from People's Movement, Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army, brother who served 50 years in prison. We're talking about the Panther Party's existed for 58 years. So that tells you that, and you've been out for how long, Jalil? About 4 years right now? 4 or 5 years?
It was 4 years on the 6th of this month.
4 years of the 6th of this month. Yeah. And I want to say, I'm gonna go ahead and claim our joints. The first podcast he ever did was our podcast. So I definitely, we appreciate that. Deruba had to do like 8 other people podcasts before he got to us.
Well, he's famous, so I mean, everybody,
I know, you know what I'm saying?
Everybody trying to get on his bandwagon, so we can respect that,
Oh, thank you. I see it. Jalil, no. Yeah. And he muted, so he can't even talk shit, Jalil. He not muted himself.
If fame and poverty goes together, then I guess I'm famous.
Well, that's all right. I think we all famous then. But anyway, definitely Jalil, 50 years, I'm talking about 50 years, freedom fighter, so on and so forth. And he's hit the ground running, still moving, still organizing with us. We happy to have both of you brothers, because I learned a lot from both of y'all. I usually don't give nobody no credit, but I learned a lot from both of y'all before I even met you. You know what I'm saying? Just even going back to before D got out. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So yeah, so definitely glad to have you on. But Jalil, for folks who aren't clear, because again, you're saying you've been home 4 years, you was locked up 50. That's 54 49, right there.
49 plus.
49 plus. Yes. And we know Letitia James was trying to keep you a little bit longer than that. We talked about her rotten ass a few days ago.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you, what was it like? Because the party was young.
Yeah.
You was young yourself. I think you was locked up at what, 19?
I think it's important to understand that the Black Panther Party was essentially a youth movement, right? There was no one at the inception of the Black Panther Party was over the age of 30. It was 30 years and younger. I mean, it was the teens and 20s, right? These are kids in high school or just getting their first job, but they were dedicated, right? They were dedicated to the ideals that we are fighting for and the love for our people. Right, and so that was important for us to understand the evolution of the Black Panther Party. That in fact it was a youth movement, right? Dedicated, determined, freedom-loving young Black men and women who understood that they was in a world of oppression, right? That the society, the social order in and of itself was anti-Black for the most part. And therefore, we had to engage in the kind of organizing that provides certain services in our community that the government was not serving, that there was not any corporate interests providing these kind of services in our community. So we had to organize them themselves. Black Panther Party, as I'm sure Dee explained, was the first organization to raise up the issues of sickle cell anemia across this country, right? To establish free breakfast programs. There were no free breakfast programs in these schools until the Black Panther Party established them, right? Health clinics in our communities, they didn't exist. Transportation to go visit your people in prison didn't exist until the Black Panther Party. That's the kind of work that was being organized by young people, right? And not only that, but defending the community against police violence and terror in our community. Ensuring that they adhere to their protocols, or at least to the extent that we could make them adhere to the protocol, or if not, reprisals when they didn't. All right, so it was important for us to understand that another point is explicitly clear, that the sixth rule, rule number 6 of the Black Panther Party was no Black Panther Party member can join any other organization, underground organization, except for the Black Liberation Army. All right. And then that was important to understand as well, that when the Black Panther Party came into existence, it was well established that at some point in time, we have to engage in armed struggle, right? And the Black Panther Party, the individual Black Panther Party, particularly young folks, was willing to do so. I got recruited into the Black Underground at the age of 18. I joined the party at 16, was in the underground at 18, and 19, they captured me, right? And did 49 plus years inside prison, and came back out, get right back into the movement again. But this is what we do, right? This is the kind of discipline, right, that was engendered within us by being members, dedicated members of the Black Panther Party. So it's important for us to understand that Dee was very instrumental in ensuring that it grew and we evolved in terms of this work that we are doing, particularly in regards to defending our community. So it's important for us to know that we have living heroes walking these streets, right? And many young people have no clue. Right, no clue of what's going on amongst us, and therefore they don't come get this history, come get these lessons that we have to impart on them. I tell young people today, listen, there comes a point in time where I have to pass the baton, right? But in order for me to pass the baton, you got to be ready to accept it in stride, right? So we don't lose no momentum, right? So that means you got to get engaged now. You got to be involved now, right? In terms of what's going on in this country, and it's particularly crucial because of what they're doing in terms of the development of cop cities across the country, right? Cop cities and what they train these cops to do? Engage in urban warfare. Urban warfare against who? Right? Who are they planning to get in urban warfare against? That's a question that needs to be asked. Right? It's us. Right? And that means essentially that they're planning on developing. They understand that in the future there's going to be resistance to the system, right? That we're going to rise up, right? But then, I mean, they're creating the conditions for us to do so, right? The necessity for us to do so, right? By virtue of how they monopolizing and all the resources, right? And ensuring that Black people continue to be controlled and contained in their communities, as they did when Africans was on the plantation. Okay, so it's important for us to understand that they are preparing for another civil war, right, in this country, and we're not ready for it.
I want to ask you, Jalil, because something important that you said that I appreciate is you said essentially the Black Panther Party was a youth organization, and I think about Chairman Fred Hampton from the Black Panther Party, who was assassinated at 21 on him and defense captain Mark Clark. Of course, Chairman Fred was Illinois chapter, deputy chairman of Illinois chapter. But one of the things I remember in talking to his mother and his wife, and of course his son Chairman Fred Jr., one of the things that I learned was him being 14 years old, being the junior captain, the leader of the junior NAACP, and how he had recruited, I believe, like, I don't know if it was like 500 or so or 5,000 youth or whatever, to that particular formation, but also, you know, the feds having a Fed file on him at that early age. Mm-hmm. So before the Black Panther Party even came into existence, he already had a Fed file as a youth. I want to ask you, and the Ruben could chime in as well, what were some of the things that, when you talk about a youth organization, that set the Black Panther Party apart from other organizations that existed? Because of course there's always been different organizations, different clubs, so on and so forth. But what are some of the things that made you say, you know what, I can rock with these cats right here. This is who I need to roll with. These other dudes, they're all right, but they ain't like us. You know what I'm saying? What did that? What?
Very similar to Chairman Fred's evolution from the NAACP. My mom was a member of the NAACP, and she used to take us out on marches, right? Drag us around on marches with the NAACP. And so that was one of my introductions into the struggle. When I saw the Black Panther Party demonstrating and getting in formations, I told my mom, I said, I'm gonna be one of them. Right? She said, no, you're not. No, you know. I said, listen, Mark, I'm gonna be one of them. Right? They fighting for our people. Right? And that's when I understood. I evolved in a family that was activist. Okay, my mom was a student of African dance, right, as a young woman, and so and her African instructor taught her that she's African. So that's what she taught us, my sister and I, that we're African, and we learned the African dance. At the age of 15, she bought me my conga drum, my first conga drum. Right, and cultural nationalists. I was associated with the House of Umoja, was associated with the US organization at that time. Right, this is when I was 14, 15 years old. Right, started the first BSU, Black Student Union, right, in our high school to learn Black studies. Right, we didn't have Black studies at that time. We didn't have BSUs. She was organizing in high school. So it was just an evolutionary process for me. I ran into some old comrades of mine, junior high school friends of mine who had since joined the Black Panther Party, right? A brother named Richard O'Neill and others. And by virtue of their relationship to the Black Panther Party, I got involved too as well. They knew that I was militant in my own right, and so they said, "Then you need to be part of this there." And so at the age of 16, while I was outside working on the Panther, taking bundles of papers out of the truck to be prepared for distribution, right, I decided I'm going inside and I'm going to sign up. Right, and that's when I became a member of the Black Panther Party at the age of 16. So for me, it was a question of evolving through my familiar or family relationships. Right, when my mom was an activist in the Black Panther Party, and so that very similar, like I said, for Fred, having been a member of working with the NAACP. My mom was in the NAACP, and she took us along, and that gave me the process of understanding that we have to fight for our freedom and liberation and independence and our own dignity as human beings on this planet.
All right. No, definitely appreciate that. Drew, would you like to add on to that?
Well, not really. I mean, Jalil laid it out pretty well. I think that one of the things that he pointed out that's of significance is that revolutionaries and revolutionary organizations of the mid to late 60s were very young. We weren't, that a revolutionary process, revolutionary action is for the young. It's carried out by the young, by youth. And this is one of the reasons why I had pointed out that when the movement was somewhat shattered and divided, and the generation that came up afterwards, the young people that came up afterwards, didn't have that legacy, didn't have that historical continuum, didn't have those examples, didn't have the organizations that they could join or become part of and develop. I think one of the things that Gerald Horne was trying to point out in his book about how maybe the West Coast Panther Party overemphasized the class nature or the revolutionary nature of the lumpen proletariat was kind of like a mistake. I think that should be taken with a grain of salt, because we realize that historically the most revolutionary classes in the colonies as well as in developed societies, there's always been young people who have been alienated from the economic and political mainstream of the system. They have become the ones most susceptible to revolutionary ideology and revolutionary politics. And I think Jalil, when he was talking about his evolution as a young man into the political consciousness that he has today, he emphasized and showed that this was the case. That he was young, his family were involved, albeit with organizations that were not revolutionary organizations, but they were in the forefront of the struggle for Black human rights in the United States at that particular historical moment. We know now that today the NAACP, unless it undergoes a complete overhaul of its leadership into a more younger and radical and more astute members, will go on to become, or will have established themselves as an establishment reformist organization. We can't underestimate the power of capitalism and the white supremacist social and cultural construct. We can't underestimate its ability to co-opt people's culture and people's politics and turn it against the interests of the people. So I think Jalil pointed out very succinctly that revolution is the purview of the young. It's the territory of young people, and our job as senior citizens, although we may be reluctant to admit that, is to advise, is to try to bring forward a more coherent understanding of their legacy, the legacy of revolutionary struggle in the United States and the empire.
Let me just add just one more point to what D said. Right, D said that there's a generation that has been lost, that has not had the continuity of resistance, the continuity of struggle. And the reason why is for that is several reasons, but one particularly is this here. The FBI had a program, right, primarily in the COINTELPRO, that stated that if young people were to come to revolutionary teachings, they'd be dead revolutionaries. He didn't say they'd be captured and be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. They said they'd be dead revolutionaries. And that's what happened to Fred. That's what happened to Bunchy and others, right, within our movement, Sylvester and many others within part of our movement. They was murdered, right? But not excuse me, I'm on Zoom right now, okay? Not only that, but I'm at the office, right? Not only that, but in regards to lost generations, right? After the Black Panther Party was destroyed, essentially diminished in its capacity to function, what they do, they flood the community with drugs, right? With cocaine, right? And we lost 2 generations to the crack epidemic. 2 generations gone as a result of the crack epidemic. And what is that? That's chemical warfare. And we know who brought the drugs in because they told us they did. The CIA, right? So essentially, the United States government poisoned our community, right, with chemical warfare, right? And so we got to understand the dynamics involved. Why we lost a couple of generations to the war, right? The war to diminish our capacity to empower ourselves as a people, as an oppressed nation, as a colonized nation, right? And so it's important for us to understand we need to really investigate to what extent that the government used chemical warfare on our community and the devastation that it had. They need to be charged with those violations, with them human rights violations, right? And destroying at least 2 generations of our community.
You know, it's wild because you weren't on earlier, but that's one of the things I paused D on, right? Because we was just talking about quote unquote crack epidemic. We talked about chemical and biological warfare, and then you just used the words saying how the U.S. government poisoned our community, right? And I think that again, you know, these are catchphrases, sound bites, etc., to the average ear because they're used to folks just saying it. But I think that the fact that we've been so desensitized, you understand what I'm saying? It don't seep in, it doesn't permeate, it doesn't, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't hit home because it just sounds like, oh, they just trying to say this, primarily because we know victims of these epidemics, of this genocide. Mm. And because we know these victims of this genocide, automatically inside of ourselves, inside of our minds, we instantly say, well, man, why don't you just do such and such? Why don't you just, so we end up blaming the victim. You know what I'm saying? And it reminds me of Gil Scott's joint, Home is Where the Hatred Is, where he said, you keep saying, kick it, quit it. But did you ever try? You understand what I'm saying? When it's war, when it's genocide and it transforms, this is the ill thing about that particular warfare. It transforms the victims into
passive resistance, right?
Passive resistance, but not only that, dependence or codependence on their own genocide. So you're depending on your death. Right. You need this. I need this. I know it's killing me. You understand what I'm saying? But I just need to get high. I just need to get out of this current situation for a few minutes. I know it's only going to last for about 5-10 minutes, but I need to escape this reality. And at the risk, I'm willing to play Russian roulette. And we don't even see it like that. That is a whole nother level of treachery. And like you said, being brought up on charges like that. But I'm also wondering some of the new tactics, because again, both of you, it was proven that, that it was, the government was behind your captures, right? Coming from the party, crossing over to like the Black Liberation Army, because I think that one of the things that you pointed out, Jalil, a few minutes ago, was saying like, you didn't necessarily go into the difference, but you talked about point number 6, I believe, in regards to you not being able to join any other military except for the Black Liberation Army, right? Or any other formation. I want to know, like, what was the inspiration, and we can answer it if you want to or not, you know what I'm saying, keeping in mind where we at. But what was the inspiration to say, okay, boom, you talked about moving from the NAACP to the Black Panther Party, then to the Black Liberation Army. I talked to D in the past about, him even going to rallies with Dick Gregory and things of that nature, just arriving to certain points and whatnot. So I want to ask both of you, like, because there are youth watching right now, there are individuals that are making transformations and are confused as to how they can get from point A to point B. What was the ultimate decision that said, okay, boom, I'm going to fight for my people as under the Malcolm doctrine of by any means necessary? You know what I'm saying? I'm going to stand up and I'm with this resistance, because both of y'all was young. So, I mean, look, if you don't mind sharing that.
Go ahead, D.
Well, I think that if we read, if the listeners could get a hold of Orasani Burton's Tip of the Spear, I think many younger brothers and sisters could get a better grasp that and understand that programs like COINTELPRO were not coincidental programs, were not things that just came out of thin air, that white folks just decided that they would implement because black militants came along and black revolutionaries came along. COINTELPRO began at the turn of the century. It was originally aimed at the Communist Party when socialism and communism was on the rise in the industrial West, when workers were being mobilized, especially after the so-called Russian Revolution. So Garvey was an original target of COINTELPRO, Marcus Garvey and the UNIA. The techniques that we use to destabilize and neutralize Garvey became integral to the program that would later become COINTELPRO. And COINTELPRO, of course, was first aimed at the Communist Party USA because they believed, because the capitalist rulers in America and the government believed that that the Soviet Union, which had come into existence after the Russian Revolution, was somehow infiltrating and undermining the ruling class and workers here in America. The working classes struggles of early industrial America in the 1920s and the 1930s. This working class struggle was decidedly socialist and communist in its understanding of workers and workers' rights. And if we go back even further to the Civil War, if we understand what the Civil War was about, the Civil War was about, in essence, the struggle for dominance between an agrarian based ruling class and mercantilism and industrial, the beginning of an industrialized corporate ruling class. It was a struggle between chattel slavery and wage slavery. Which one would become the ascendant? And this all was part of the European settler state experience of conquering North America and enslaving blacks, Africans as an act of war for primitive accumulation of capital. So what I'm trying to say is, when Jalil pointed out that the counterintelligence program, one of the memos said that they had to discourage black youth from becoming revolutionaries, that they should rather be entertainers and sports figures that their white society could relate to, otherwise they would be dead revolutionaries. This concept, this idea didn't just pop up out of the clear blue sky just because black folks became militant and Malcolm was around and Georgia Shorty, Elijah Muhammad, would become leaders. It was a much more considered evolution of settler states, political evolution and evolution of violence and the use of violence into what we have today, the democratic fascist police state of America. So I think that we need to understand that history is a continuum, and that unless we understand some of the trends and the development of history, including the history of repression, the history of our resistance, we're going to be lost. And this is one of the reasons why the war, heroin, when it first hit the black community in the 1950s, I was gangbanging. I was a kid. I was in New York, and I was part of the street sets. And I remember how heroin hit the community, and it transformed brothers who would have died in the war revolutionaries into pathetic figures nodding in the rain in the park. Some of the brothers that represented black manhood, ghetto manhood, urban manhood at that time, became sniveling drug dealers and drug addicts. So the the poisoning of a generation that Jalil alluded to, had began in the 1950s. It began as during the so-called Harlem Renaissance. Most of the jazz musicians that we now know as icons were heroin addicts. Many of them were heroin addicts. Many of the jazz and blues singers were heroin addicts in the 1940s and 1950s. So this is an evolution of chemical warfare that the enemy found very effective over a long period of time. It just didn't stop with the crack epidemic. And the Black Congressional Caucus members, many of the old school members, they were all on board on the war on drugs. They were all on board on the criminalization of narcotic use and transforming drug addicts into criminals and sentencing them to prison to long terms. And so the prison industrial complex grew up and expanded as a consequence of the war on drugs and the war on poverty and all of these things. So we are where we are today. Some of us, we've read books like Alexander's The New Jim Crow, and we've become all inspired and took up arms and struggles against the prison industrial complex. But the prison industrial complex is part and parcel of the national security state. And the national security state is an entity that functions over and above the electoral representatives of that state. So this is why Obama could come to power and do absolutely nothing for Black folks and become the bomber in charge of Africa. This is why Kamala Harris, if she should ascend to the presidency of the United States, she's not going to run shit. The people that's running stuff are the people, the so-called deep state, or so-called the national security state, and the corporate interests that they represent. When Eisenhower left office, I believe it was 1956 or 54, around there, he was a
opposition.
Yeah, he was the commander in chief of the United States of the Allies in Western Europe that defeated Nazi Germany. He was a political general, as opposed to MacArthur, who was the commander-in-chief of the Pacific Fleet and was talking about bombing China back into the Stone Age. They had to relieve him of his duties and say, my homeboy's a little off the chain here, you see. But Eisenhower rose to become president, and so we really have to...
And he warned against the military-industrial complex.
That's what I was getting to, yeah. Mm-hmm. And so he was a child, well, I ain't going to call it a child. He was a product of the burgeoning or the developing military-industrial complex. And when we look at the Marshall Plan to reestablish Europe, to establish Europe again, the first thing that the Europeans did after after the end of World War II in 1945 was to try to recolonize the Third World. The British tried to reestablish their colony, their gem colony in India. They tried to maintain their colonies in Africa. The French went back into Southeast Asia and was defeated in 1954. So we have to understand that the United States in its Marshall Plan revived the very enemies that it fought in World War II, and this is including Japan, they revived these enemies in order to thwart and stop the development of the liberation of third world countries, the development of a global economy based on socialist and communist values, as opposed to capitalist exploitation and militarization and extraction of third world resources. So history, as Malcolm said, is the best subject to reward all research. And so we need to understand that the war on drugs, the flooding of the Black community with heroin and crack and all of this stuff was a considered strategy that had been developed over decades. It just didn't pop up in the 60s because we were burning down cities. It was a strategy and a program that proved extremely successful. And we are paying the price for that success with the present generation of young people we have today who are politically illiterate, who don't understand history and where the empire is headed right now.
There's a couple of nuances of what Daruba had just expressed that I'd like to just share. And one of them is this. In terms of the COINTELPRO and FBI Director's Counterintelligence Program, it's important for us to understand that J. Edgar Hoover, who rose to become the director of the FBI, was originally an agent, right, in the 1920s. And one of his direct contact in terms of trying to destroy was Marcus Garvey, right? Marcus Garvey was one of his targets. So then come the 50 years later, 40 years later, he devised the COINTELPRO documents, right, 20 years later, and he talked about to prevent the rise of a Messiah, right? That's based upon his experience that he had with Marcus Garvey, recognizing that Marcus Garvey was organizing here in the United States, in Africa, in Latin America, in the Caribbean, and also in Britain, right? A broad-based organizing. I think one of the greatest organizers that we have in our contemporary time, of Pan-Africanist organizers that we had in our. So he understood that the necessity to prevent anyone to rise to that level of influence from the Black population, right? And put in a document to prevent the rise of a Messiah. He said that Malcolm X could have been one if he had not, he was not murdered, right? And second of all, Martin Luther King would have been one if he had not turned away from his pacifism. Okay, is to turn the other cheek prospect. So for me, in terms of my youth development and my militancy, right, one of the words from that evolvement came from the movement of the 60s, the rise that was going on across the country, where it was, as Dee talked about, burning down these cities, right? I was 14 or 15 years old, right, engaged in the riots in San Francisco when the police shot and killed a young brother up in Hunters Point. Right, it caused an uproar throughout San Francisco. And so this militancy, it came as a result of oppression. All right, and so for our young people to get involved in the Black Panther Party, it was as a result of the repression and understanding that we had to fight back in order to gain some form of dignity and to demand certain services that should have been provided for the community from the onset. And so for me, it was a result of social development, right, that guided me towards the degree from which I knew that at some point in time that I would have to put my life on the line and for our overall struggle, right, and join the Black Panther Party, Black Liberation Army. But it's social conditions create the means and the mechanisms for which we can empower our people and evolve towards the degree from which we are struggling for our own liberation and independence. All right. And so for us, that's the reason why, as Dee pointed out, right, they had to use chemical warfare to tamper down and to prevent the rise of the militancy of our people in our struggle. Right, but that's not the first time in history. We know about the opium wars, and as Dee talked about, that they know how they can suppress movements. Right, we know about the opium wars in China, where British was flooding China with opium. Right, and creating those kind of conditions in the opium wars, right, and they had to fight against the British and in the tariffs of seclusion, right, or isolation that they tried to establish over there in China. And so we know that they have a history of repressing movements, and they're using every form necessary to do so, whether it be by virtue of propaganda, distraction, chemical warfare, biological warfare. They'll use whatever they have in their arsenal of repression to prevent us from rising and for our own liberation. So militancy is an essential. We have to rise up to the degree where we understand that our freedom is based upon our capacity to resist a system of oppression, period.
Okay, check this out. And we have a few minutes. What I want to do right now, because you talked about militants, you talked about resistance, and earlier one of the things that Ruben and I was talking about was we mentioned the fact that yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day, right? We mentioned Columbus, we mentioned the whole holidays, etc., so on and so forth. What I want to do at this time, again, I had the opportunity to learn from, freedom fighters on both coasts when it comes to, or all coasts when it comes to the party, you know, BGF, BLA, so on and so forth, SNCC, etc., right? RAM and the likes. One of the things that I always find is that there are soldiers, there are warriors that existed who were comrades who would be unsung. You know what I'm saying? Comrades who have been either purposely forgotten or erased, or folks didn't even know they existed. If you all were to pick one or two individuals that you came across that you would say was a comrade who, you know, put in work, and either the world don't know their name or the world should know their name, or revolutionaries should know their name, I would say, who would that be? I know it might be a tough question, but I know just from being around a lot of you OGs that there are names that have inspired me like I knew them because I heard the stories. So if you don't mind sharing that, that's what I would like to see on this 58-year anniversary of the Black Panther Party.
Well, I got to go. I got a medical appointment shortly. I got to leave. So I just want to leave on that note and say, I think Jalil knows some of these brothers as well as I do. One, of course, is Comrade Twyman Myers. No one knows his name. No one knows what he's done. No one knows who he was. Another one is Kimu White. No one knows that who Kimu White was. And then there was Frank Heavy Fields in the BLA. There was my past comrade Thomas Blood McCrary. You know, I mean, some of these comrades, their memories, you know, they bring very emotional. They bring very emotional feelings to my mind, because I know how dedicated these brothers were, and I know how well they fought, and I know how they died, and I just, these are just a few comrades that I.
Sundiata Motari is another. Zay Shakur is another. There's a whole host of comrades who we've lost. Shasha Brown, another. Teddy Heath.
John.
Seth John. Yeah, John, man. Come on. Seth Hayes, right? Is another, right? These are comrades who brothers who did time and fought for us. You know, was the heroes. I mean, we don't laud them. We have not really taken note of their sacrifices. Sophia Bukhari, Sister Sophia Bukhari, Marilyn Buck, right? A white comrade, right? Marilyn Buck, who was about the business, right? Escaped, went back into the movement, right? After she was captured, right? There's many others. We can go off for days. Geronimo Pratt, Comrade Geronimo, that some people don't even know his contribution to our struggle, right? 27 years for a crime that they know that he did not commit. And also we got living comrades right now, like Imam Jamil Al-Amin, right? Mumia Abu Jamal, that we have to fight for. Kamal Siddiqui, that we have to fight for, you know, to get them out of the system, out of the penal slave system, and that's what it is. It is a slave system, and so we have our those that we have lost, and those who are still we're struggling to fight to get out of prison, our political prisoners today. So there's a lot of comrades whose history has been lost, right? Whose contribution has not been noted for, right? And that's our responsibility. And I'm certain that in Daruba's book, and when it ever comes out, there's some of those individuals who will be lauded. Okay.
Don't you start, man.
But yeah,
we remain silent on that one. But go ahead.
So we have to give recognition. I'm glad you brought that question up, Kalanji. We have to give recognition to those that have transitioned, and also to our living heroes that we still have and fighting for to be released from the penal slave system.
No doubt, no doubt. Well, listen,
I have to really go right now, brother.
I already know. Definitely appreciate you.
And I just want to say I appreciate you having me on this anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party. I'm glad you got Jalil on. I know Jalil will continue. And so, let's work towards building this united front. Let's try to do what we can in these situations. And I assure you that the situation is going to go from bad to worse as far as the empire is concerned over the next several months. And we need to have a movement. We need to build a radical united front and in order to survive what is coming to the empire. So I just want to say thank you, Kalanji, for giving me a shout out and allowing me to come on and talk to brothers and sisters. And again, I'm going to send my solidarity to Jalil. And I just wanted to express in person too, while I'm on the air, the work that his beloved wife has done in trying to build support. I mean, I got my ticket to come for this medical treatment precisely because of her efforts. Shout out to Val and all of the comrades that contributed. I want to send my love and respect and humble appreciation for all the folks that have been working to try to help me. And I want to take this opportunity to do that. So I just
thank you, Daruba. And I'm certain that Val will much appreciate it because she does hard work. She's in the business. She's in the work.
Yeah, she's about that. She's did a great job for me. I know that from that personally. I know from Dequi and other folks what she's done with Sekou and my company. Yeah, I got to go. So,
we'll check you later for sure.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, that was our comrade and brother Daruba bin Wahad. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, there is a ticker where you can still support his Cash App and his Zelle for his medical treatment and flight and so on and so forth. And definitely shout out to Val. Val been raising more money than anybody we know right now. She becoming the movement fundraiser. I know she not raised.
Don't tell her that. She ain't trying to hear that.
She ain't trying to hear it. Hey, listen.
Not like that. Her capacity is far broader than just being a fundraiser.
I already know.
Hey, let's not limit her capacity.
Oh no, I ain't gonna do that. I'm just saying that I know that just on this platform alone, she, you know what I'm saying, her works, even behind the scene, whether it was for Sekou or Baba Bilal, the Daruba, so on and so forth.
Even for me, when I was inside, when she put together a jazz for justice.
There you go.
For me.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's not the business. There's no doubt about that.
So I ain't gonna say nothing else about her fundraising skills.
Okay. All right.
But we appreciate it. And we glad that we appreciate both of you all bringing power and bringing life to this movement and inspiration. You know what I'm saying? Because you two alone, man, I know damn well a few times y'all inspired me and didn't even know it. You know what I'm saying? Didn't even know it. Because sometimes, you might hear a word or two, and that right there is like, okay, because I was headed in this direction over here. You know what I mean? And man, sometimes a gun and a grin could change the game. So definitely appreciate that. We got a few minutes left. I want to ask you, because of the fact that we've been talking about building a united front, we've been talking about the People's Senate, so on and so forth. I want to just ask, like, what's the state of the People's Senate right now for folks who aren't familiar. If you can give them a little rundown. And I know that there's I'm planning on doing some things with both you and Daruba in the future, hopefully on this platform, because I think that the two of you brothers in particular have been spearheading efforts along with folks like Sekou, who's our ancestor comrade right now, along with folks like Jihad and Ashanti and Kazi and so many others that I got to hang out with last month. What was that, August? You know what I'm saying? When you all was out here. So definitely that was rejuvenating. But for folks who don't know, you know what I'm saying, please, explain the People's Senate and why it's important to get down.
Okay. I'll try to be as succinct as I possibly can. In 2018, while I was locked up in a special housing unit, SHU in Southport, in New York, I wrote a letter to my comrade Jihad Abdul Muhammad, who's the chairman of the National Jericho Movement, which I co-founded along with Baba Herman Ferguson and Sister Sophia Bukhari back in 1998. So I asked him there was a necessity to bring back the international Jews to the United States. We had brought him back in 1978, 79, when I initiated the international, not the international campaign, national campaign to petition the United Nations in regards to the issue of political prisoners and the existence of conditions of prisoners in the United States. And so we decided it was time for us to bring it back, and we decided to do so, but we're going to bring the issues of genocide to the table. So in October of 2021, we had the International Tribunal. It was held at the Malcolm S. Betty Shabazz Education and Research Center, which is formerly known as the Audubon, where Al-Haj Malik Shabazz was assassinated. It was the appropriate place to have the International Tribunal. And as a result of the International Tribunal, they decided, based upon 5 charges that we laid against the United States, those 5 charges being environmental racism, health inequities, mass incarceration, police killing of our people, state-sanctioned murder of our people, and mass incarceration and political prisoners. They found the United States guilty on all 5 of those charges, and it was cumulative to that of genocides, that they had engaged in the process of genocides against Black people. A lot of people need to, in fact, you can go to spiritofmandela.org, spiritofmandela.org, or you can YouTube 2021 International Tribunal on Genocides, and all of the hearings will come up on YouTube. We have them all established. Or you can go to spiritofmandela.org and go to the International Tribunal, and you'll find all of the hearings there as well. As a result of the International Tribunal finding the United States guilty of genocide, we decided the necessity for us to remove ourselves from harm going forward. Right, and in so doing, we have to create alternative systems of governing, and that's what we're calling for in terms of what we call the People's Senate. Right, we're building what we call the People's Senate across the country, which is essentially a national front, as something as Daruba has been calling for, the National Front Against Fascism. Right, our organization, or our building, the People's Senate, it will be an anti-fascist building, a determination as we build towards anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist imperialism, anti-fascism, anti-white supremacy, understanding of the struggle that we have to engage in going forward. More importantly, is that in terms, in as much as in terms of building the People's Senate, it is apparently it is essential that we organize campaigns across the state, across the country, in regards to that. One thing that the Northeast, our Northeast chapter of the People's Senate is having a concert. I think next week, right? Next week they're having a concert, which is important, very important to have to note. Right, it's also fundraising, but it's also the means for which we can build the basis from which people will understand what the People's Senate is about. We need to try to organize a national fundraising campaign, right, for the People's Senate, which I wanted to talk to you about at some other point in time. Very similar to what Val did with the Jazz for Justice organizing, right? We want to do something similar to that, but on a broader scale, on a national level, to bring the issues of the People's Senate more broadly on our movements. It is a necessity that we try to unite as many forces as we possibly can under the rubric or under the umbrella of the People's Senate. That is important. We have thousands of organizations doing work on the community level, state level, and some are even trying to evolve on the international level, as we are, as we have been doing. My dear comrade Jihad Abdul Muhammad has been over to Tanzania, been over to Nigeria, and over to Ghana, raising the question, South Africa, raising the question of our struggle here in the United States. And so it's important for us to know that the People's Senate is the foundation towards building a national front in this country, a national front of resistance and seeking alternative systems of governing. Because this system of government is not for the people and by the people. And I can express that on another level, and that is this here. this country is run by 744 billionaires, right? We have the illusion of inclusion, thinking that we live in a democracy, when in fact we live in a plutocracy. The rich rules, right? So we have 744 billionaires in this country that is essentially has the cumulative wealth of over nearly $7 trillion, nearly $7 trillion. All right. And by virtue of that accumulation of wealth, right, they're basically running the country. There are approximately 6 major corporations that has that controls almost 85% of the wealth of this country, right? Within these monopolies, and so for us to recognize that this system, and also know this, that the federal government is in fact a corporation, right? 28 USC 3002 15A states that the United States is a federal corporation. In 20 years ago, the United States Supreme Court made a decision called People's United, stated that corporations are people. Corporations are people. So how corporations become people? All right, because the corporation for which we are governed by, this government that we are governed by, in fact, is a corporation. And so when they say we the people or for the people, they're not talking about flesh and blood human beings. They're talking about corporations. As the United States Supreme Court has stated that corporations are people, and the government itself is a corporation. So they function in the best interest of corporations, not in the best interest of people. People of the United States, for the most part, are wage laborers. Right, wage laborers, right? We go to work, get a wage, and make profits for the corporations, right? They take the profits, we do the work, okay? And so we have to change that dynamic, change that kind of relationship that we have with government and how government functions, right? And so for us, building the People's Senate, creating alternative systems of governing is extremely important for the future of us as a people, and to rid a system where we are being super exploited, particularly Black, brown, and indigenous people, super exploited in this country, and all other people being exploited just by the fact that this system is based upon the ideas of competition, individualism, right? And therefore, those of us who are not in the capacity to compete or in the capacity to be enslaved, right? To be enslaved, wage slaves, and that's what we are today for the most part. So building the People's Center is the means and mechanism for which we create alternative systems of governing and research again to excise ourselves from the system of corporate dominance.
No doubt, no doubt. Hey Jalil, as always, honor, pleasure to have you on. You know what I mean? We gotta get you back on a little more regularly. You know what I mean? You know, we got, of course, our brother Frank. Shout out to Frank Brown and Abdul Hop.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, their show is now on the platform on Wednesdays. Make sure you check them out. 1 p.m. EST every Wednesday.
They're actually organized for the Northeast Political Prisoners Coalition.
Without a doubt.
That Sekou had brought into existence.
No
right?
doubt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no. And we definitely happy to because that's one of the things we used to do was a joint called Freedom Fridays. You know what I'm saying? Which of course we'll probably bring back, but we're happy to make sure that we have programming that is focusing on the PPs, because I think that sometimes, if any, there might be a few political prisoners that may even get a shout out, but for the most part, political prisoners as a whole, it's like a foreign word. It's like, like what's that? You know what I'm saying? That's Swahili. What that mean? You know what I mean? That's how they roll. But definitely shout out to all the fighters out there. Shanti, Kazi, Jihad, Bilal, Sunni Ali, Get Well, Faranza Bowers, and Joy Powell, and so many others that, Kamal Siddiqui, et cetera, that, Imam Jamil, that I may haven't mentioned, continue to fight. Free Mumia, free Leonard, free them all. Until next time, on this 58-year anniversary of the Black Panther Party, we say salute, we say free them all. Appreciate you.
All power to the people.
All power to the people, no doubt. You're checking out the Rise Up Morning Show. Peace, my brother. Be safe. Assalamu alaikum. You're checking out the Rise Up Morning Show here on Black Power Media. It's been a powerful 58-year anniversary. Make sure you share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. let the folks know that Black Power Media is where it's at. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that. Also support our Patreon, which is scrolling at the bottom. We have a new magazine that just dropped for folks who are not familiar. It's called Afro Pick. The 3rd issue will be out in the next couple of weeks. Our 2nd issue dropped a few weeks ago. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you continue to support the great work that we have on this platform. Black Power Media Reloaded is the platform. Till next time, we'll see you in the whirlwind. Peace.
Sometimes the riot is a quiet one, or the battle is to love yourself and function in society where voices of reason are muted by anxiety, like gaining notoriety is selling your soul. So we tend to go no deeper than the shallow water level, trying to keep us overhead in the face of all the slurs and the stares, mentally frozen, paralyzed by fear of failure and success. So we lock, stock, barrel, running while it's crumbling. All these towers and they're babbling, but the baby's in the bath and the stash under the bed on my head, spinning from the circles and the puppets and the strings that they pull. Then we move. Reactionary warfare never produces winners on the field. Feeble and foolish. What tools and what weapons are we using? We need some new ones. Real revolution. It's real solutions. What we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my inner me really a mirror for the galaxy. New time, brand new paradigms, new contracts to sign. They thought that this would all be televised, though it's happening right before our very eyes. It's on the inside, with their guns cocked. When that rock drops, standing on the rooftop, praying that the mountaintop can live inside the valley. People tell me the reward is somewhere off in heaven, like heaven's only in the sky, like chariots are swinging, like God is something separate from yourself, from your wealth, from your lover, from your neighbor. Oh, your savior is coming in your own name, coming with the face the same. Real revolution. It's real solutions. Where we've taken on the ways of the ones who conquer with their guns and religion and division. Got my inner me looking like my enemy. Real revolution. Where my enemy is really a mirror for the galaxy.